Okay, good evening, everybody. Well, this is a great turnout. Thank you for coming to the ACM on this Friday evening. And I'd like to welcome you here tonight, and very much looking forward to getting our speaker up here to tell us more about Buddhism in Northeast Thailand and Central Laos. Speaker tonight is currently research fellow for the ACM and is doing some work in that particular area, but is in fact going to be joining the ACM as a curator for Southeast Asia in the very near future. Technically already has, I think, but needs to finish off his fellowship first, I think. Stephen has a PhD from SOAS in archaeology and art history, and has worked on projects including the Lost Kingdoms exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum the last couple of years. So without any further ado, I think we will welcome Stephen to the stage, and I hope you enjoy the talk.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, just first off, I'd like to register my thanks to the ACM for this research fellowship. They've been extremely generous in both their time and giving me full access to the material that I've been looking at, particularly Dave Henkel and Heidi Tan and the rest of the staff. So it's been a very good 6 months, and hopefully will continue to be a very productive future here at the ACM. Today, what I want to really look at is my PhD research topic, and also how I've sort of developed that over the last few years. So let me start off with that. Basically, my main aim in this research was to investigate how exactly Buddhism moved into Northeast Thailand and Central Laos, and that happens from around circa 6th to 9th century CE. Obviously, in general, this is a very important question in terms of Southeast Asian studies in general, the history of Buddhism, and relationships between South and Southeast Asia. And I focused on Northeast Thailand, Central Laos as a case study to investigate those processes. One reason was mainly because it was quite understudied compared to a lot of other parts of Southeast Asia. So a lot of my field work was extensive survey work carried out between 2007 and 2009. And I tried to first map and then analyze the distribution for the evidence of Buddhism within the region, with the aim of trying to gain a better understanding of how and where Buddhism entered the region. And one thing that I also want to talk about tonight, which originally was not part of my research proposal at all, and that's how ancient artifacts, in this case the material I was looking at, get reused or repurposed in modern worship. So I want to explore that a little bit as well today. I think it raises interesting questions about not just the nature of Buddhist religion in this case, but also can also look at our ideas of how we display works of ancient artifacts in museums as well. I think it has some bearing on that. So the main evidence for Buddhism in this period, in terms of settlement patterns, they're what we refer to as moded sites. You get them throughout most of central and northeast Thailand. We also have earthen mounds. Usually when you excavate these, they tend to be either stupa foundations or other structures related to Buddhism. I'll show you a few examples in a moment. Another interesting phenomenon is what I've entitled mountaintop sites. in the northeast in particular, and in central Laos to a certain extent, we get evidence for Buddhism being practiced on the side of mountains or sometimes on the top of mountains. And I try to contrast this with what's happening in the lowlands. I think there's different forms of, or maybe just not different forms of Buddhism, but different Buddhist activities taking place here. The main evidence that I'm looking at is what we call Sema stones. They're Buddhist boundary markers. We also have some evidence for religious architecture surviving from this period. That mainly stupas, ubosats, they're ordination halls, this is the Thai term, and viharas, assembly halls. We also get votive tablets or ceilings. Of course, we get Buddha images, mainly stone, but also bronze and terracotta. And we get a limited amount of inscriptions, not a whole lot, about 26 or 27 in total for northeast Thailand. So I want to first just look at the region in question. Let me see. All right. Okay. So this is obviously a satellite image of Thailand. And the Korat Plateau is this region here. It's quite a distinctive geological feature in its own right. And I think that has a lot of bearing on not only the culture in the period under question, but also today. This is a more schematic representation. One thing I want to point out at the outset that I think is very important, the title of this presentation, I say Northeast Thailand and Central Laos. Obviously in the 6th to 9th century, neither of these entities existed. They're modern nation states. The Thai didn't move into this region until the 12th, 13th century anyway. So I try and move away from using that terminology. The actual region itself is called the Korat Plateau, so I try to refer to it as that. And what's important as well is to realize that during this period, the Mekong River, which is obviously here, it's not a boundary between cultures. It's the opposite. It's a major transport route, means of communication. So the cultures on this side of the river and this side of the river are essentially the same. Obviously, once you get into the highland areas, we see a bit of difference. So that's just to try and emphasize that point as well. A lot of the evidence for Buddhism and its movement into the region, it happens along the three major river systems. They're the Mekong, obviously, but more importantly, the Chi River system, which is this one, and the Mun River system down here. So I'll be talking quite a lot about that tonight as well. So yeah, sorry, this is just a summary. And there are some unique material culture, visual culture elements in the Korat Plateau. The Sema stones, for example, they seem to, the earliest evidence for them in Southeast Asia is pretty much in this region. We do get a small bit of evidence for them in Myanmar as well. They also have these mountaintop Buddhas carved into the rock in Mahaparinirvana, reclining Buddhas or sleeping Buddhas as they're sometimes called. Certain stylistic features of the Buddha are somewhat different from what we get in central Thailand or in Cambodia at this time, Chen Lap. So the culture in question at this time in the 6th to 9th century, you might be familiar with it, is what we call the Dravarvati culture. It's defining it has been quite problematic in the scholarly literature for quite some time. It was originally envisioned as a kingdom that maybe over conveniently matched the modern-day borders of Thailand, as so often happens. But it seems to be based mainly in central Thailand from the 6th to 9th century. But also the material culture and also the artistic influence of it spreads much further beyond central Thailand into northeast Thailand, also northern Thailand, and parts of Laos that I'll be looking at today. One of the problems is that sometimes art historians have tried to map the political power or domination of a center based on it's the distribution of its art, which is problematic. I think art and styles and culture can move beyond political boundaries. I think there's plenty of contemporary examples for that. It does have a very distinctive art style, though, which I'll show you some examples in a moment. And like I said, there is quite a common material culture, particularly the pottery record, architecturally as well. The votive tablets can be quite similar. Site plans are another thing that people have looked at to try and show commonality. The time period is also somewhat controversial, but it's roughly the 5th to 9th, 5th to 10th, stretching right up into the 11th, but by that stage, you get a lot of Khmer influence coming in as well. An alternative label for this, or sometimes it gets conflated, is Mon or Mon Javar Vati. The Mon is an ethnic group that today still exists in Lower Burma, in the Mon state. They're thought to be the main ethnic group within this period in Javarvati. We have inscriptions in Mon language, but again, it's problematic to assume that because the inscriptions are in Mon, that everybody in that particular polity was Mon. The lingua franca of Europe for centuries was Latin, but people were not Latin. The French were, so there's plenty of examples that linguists will warn us against. This is just a sort of quick summary of Javarvati objects. The Buddha images, for one, are quite distinctive. We also get, this is the Dharmachakra, wheels of the law. This is another very distinctive. You only get this within Javarvati culture. The pottery at the top, it's stamp marked. This is another quite common feature only found in Javarvati. So the moated sites, this is a Google Earth image, and this is one of the moats today that's actually still, a lot of the moats are still functional. That's changing somewhat with more intensification of agriculture. But as you can see from the Google Earth imagery, they're quite easy to spot. The earthen mounds, this is one example. Sometimes, I show this example as well because sometimes people ask, how do archaeologists know where to dig? And it's a perfectly valid question. One of the things we do is look at the landscape. And when you see something like this, which is basically just a flat rice field, and then you see a mound, a regular shaped mound in the middle, odds on it's not a natural occurring feature. So this is one way we can potentially identify archaeological sites. This is an example of the mountaintop sites that we get throughout the region. And these are the same as stones, the Buddhist boundary markers. One reason why they're so important for tracking the spread of Buddhism is that the function of Sema is to set up a boundary, and within this, basically in order to conduct an ordination ceremony, you must do it within a recognized boundary called a Sema. The word Sema is a Thai vulgarization of the Pali word Sema, which means boundary. So when we find evidence of Sema stones, we know that there was a monastery or a monastic community present. A lot of the times at this period, the architecture, it might have had a brick foundation, but the superstructure would have been wood. So we get very little architecture surviving. But my hypothesis was by plotting the locations of Sema stones, I could trace where Buddhism was present in the region. This is some of the few examples of religious architecture that we get left. This is a octagonal stupa base. This is a four-sided stupa. And this one, the superstructure is modern, or, well, probably 17th, 18th century, but it's built on a Javarvati period foundation. So this is Javarvati period here. And this is an ubasat, an ordination hall. Again, we just have the the brick foundation surviving. You can see just here in the, this is actually still in situ Sema stone. So the Sema would have been set up in usually sets of 8 or 16 around the ubosat, and the ubosat would have been where the ordination ceremony took place. There's also one or two other specified rituals that would take place there. Okay, ceilings are votive tablets. These are a little bit more problematic in terms of what I was trying to do, because they're extremely portable. So just because you find them in one site, they could have been moved from or brought there from another. And of course you get Buddha images. This is one of the largest surviving ones from this period. It's about 11 meters long. It's in Nakhon Ratchasima province in a site called Mung Sema. This one, if any of you have been to Vientiane, this is in Wat Ho Prakaw Temple, just right outside. This one is a Maitreya figure, which is currently in LACMA in Los Angeles. This one is an Avalokiteshvara currently in Asian Art Museum, San Francisco. These are both from the so-called Prakorn Chai hoard, which is in Buriram. This is in the National Museum, Bangkok. It's another Buddha image, and this is a head from a temple just outside Vientiane in Laos as well. So just an example of some of the Buddha images that we get. Interesting to note, obviously, these two are bodhisattvas, so we have evidence for both Mahayana and, I don't want to call it Theravada at this stage, but a Pali-based form. And that's one thing to be aware of. We don't see a uniform Buddhism moving in, and that wasn't some type of organized missionary activity. It seems to be various sects moving in from India, probably Sri Lanka as well. We definitely get some of the Jataka tales that are the previous lives of the Buddha that are depicted on Sema stones follow the Pali text quite closely, so we can try and make connections there. But of course, we also get Bodhisattva images, so that would suggest Mahayana Buddhism, perhaps coming in from Cambodia, but it's difficult to trace. Another question that I needed to ask is why would a society convert to Buddhism? What does it bring? And then is it possible